Today I'm going to teach you how to take your performance from this to this. If you're not a tech nerd, this video is going to be for you. Get ready to learn some basic information. Having a good education on a subject is an excellent way to achieve whatever goal you wish to achieve. So we'll be taking a deeper look into the technology field to learn more about what affects performance in gaming, how we can improve it, and how we can apply that knowledge to modding in Skyrim. It doesn't matter what system you're on, whether it's PC, Xbox, or PlayStation, performance is one of those issues that we'll all have to face eventually, especially when it comes to modding. It starts with understanding the devices we use. Once you understand how your device works and how it runs Skyrim, you'll understand what steps you may need to take yourself to improve your performance. So let's start by identifying the similarities of each device. Simply put, they're all technically computers, and computers are made up of the same parts. Only real difference is PC is limitless, meanwhile consoles are limited for various reasons. And with that being said, this information is universal. Now that we've identified their similarities, let's break down how they function so we can understand what it takes to run the game. We'll be going over these components: GPU, CPU, RAM, VRAM, and the motherboard. Starting with GPU, this component's role is to render all visual elements like 3D models, lighting and shadows, particle effects, etc. In Skyrim, it's focused on buildings, characters, landscape, video resolution, and many other visual assets. In other words, it takes your final image and runs it on your monitor. It's like a power cord that your system solely relies on to run the graphics. For console users, we can only upgrade to the next generation to get more power. The more power, the smoother visuals and performance. So the best system to mod Skyrim for console is the Xbox Series X. Now, GPU sounds like the big dog of the group, and it is, but to be more efficient, the GPU will need to synergize with the other components in order to work efficiently. One of the components being VRAM. VRAM is specialized memory dedicated to the GPU that stores the graphical assets, or in other words, it stores the final image. The GPU presents the image while the VRAM stores the image for your GPU usage. The assets that are stored on your VRAM are usually textures, meshes, shaders, and frame buffers. Different devices have different amounts of VRAM, and so the more VRAM, the more detail can be displayed as long as your GPU is powerful enough. To simplify VRAM while modding Skyrim, think of it as a secondary memory slot, while consoles have to make do with what's installed on the console. Keep in mind that the game in general is already using up a sizable amount of your available VRAM to present the vanilla version of the game. So when it comes to mods that increase the details of the assets mentioned before, mods that change foliage, meshes, architecture, effects, textures, and generally everything else visually related, they further eat away at what's left of your available VRAM. You also want to focus on using higher quality textures for larger objects and buildings, while also focusing on using lower quality textures on smaller items in order to best optimize performance and fidelity. Try to avoid 4K and 2K mods unless you're using a very low number of mods, as they eat up a lot of VRAM. For consoles, especially Xbox One and PS4, your main focus is to look for mods that are optimized for performance and mod size. These mods are usually labeled compressed, optimized, and light. And for visuals, you'll see mods labeled 1K/512, which is the level of detail. For older consoles, your only focus is on mods labeled 512 or even lower. This will make sure that you're limiting the amount of space you take away from your VRAM. You can go higher, but you're very limited, so keep the numbers low for performance sake. The developers have optimized the game enough so that it's stable in a vanilla state. Once you add mods, you immediately disrupt the optimization. If you manage to run out of VRAM, the system proceeds to throttle some of the visuals, meaning to hold some of the visuals back. During this process, you'll notice stuttering, blurry textures, loading issues, and even missing assets. This process puts you at risk of having lower quality and performance, so be mindful of the quality and quantity of visual mods you add. Now, continue to follow along because there's more to video games than just visuals. Something has to make the world move, bring it some life. Something sort of like how time keeps our universe in motion, or like how our brains control our bodies. I'm talking about the CPU. This acts as the brain of the system. It handles the processing of logic, physics, AI, and the game engine instructions. And in Skyrim, it controls NPC behavior, schedules, quests, scripts, and physics. It also processes game world events, background calculations, and it even communicates with the GPU, telling it what to draw per frame. So while the VRAM stores graphical assets, the GPU draws the game, and the CPU tells the GPU what to draw per frame, keeping the world running correctly. Again, on console, this can't be increased, so you'll have to mod as if you had a budget. And again, once you add NPCs, physics, quest mods, or anything that manipulates scripts, you disrupt the optimization. If too many things need to be processed at once, or a process is greater than what your CPU can handle, your game begins to stutter, drop frame rate, take longer to load, have delayed actions in NPCs, and other events. So when too many things demand the CPU's attention, it can cause delays in all of the elements mentioned before. Not only that, but it can also be overloaded just like the rest of these components. And once you hit a critical workload, the CPU also throttles its performance to prevent damage. During this process, you'll stutter, drop frames, and so on. Now, in the cases of GPU, VRAM, and CPU, many mods can help optimize the game in a way that can increase performance and possibly increase the visuals. To avoid losing CPU performance for consoles, try not to use too many script-heavy mods. There are mods out there that are usually titled light, and some authors provide descriptions informing us whether it uses scripts or not. So look for non-scripted alternatives as often as possible. You want to avoid too many quest mods, too many mods that manipulate AI functioning, and too many mods that change or add game mechanics. As a reminder, the game already has a lot of scripts, so budget your mods wisely. You'll also want to be aware of CPU bottlenecking, which is just a place or an event that has a lot of processing that needs to be done. Towns and cities have tons of NPCs and events, which means tons of processing. Try to focus on mods that will reduce the amount of processing if you need more performance, and try not to stack too many if your system can handle it. The last component of the system that affects your performance is RAM. RAM is a lot like VRAM. Similar to how VRAM stores the actual details for rendered assets, RAM does it for the data that's in current use. In other words, RAM stores temporary game data that your CPU and GPU need quick access to while the game is running. This includes the textures, models, map and level data, game logic, character positions, physics calculations, and even audio assets. This allows the game to run smoothly and responsively without constantly reading from the slower storage, like a hard drive or SSD. Speaking of hard drives, as a bonus, your hard drive type makes a difference in loading speed. Hard drives are slower than solid-state drives. If you're on an older generation console, your console will have a hard drive built in, and if you're on a next-gen console, you'll have a solid-state drive installed, which is the fastest of the two. If you have a hard drive, you can buy a separate solid-state drive and install Skyrim on it, which should increase your loading speeds. However, I don't believe the mods can be installed there, and so mods won't be affected. Now back to RAM. In Skyrim, it stores general game data like scripts, quest status, engine commands, mod data, AI behavior, world states, character status, and many other assets surrounding the player. This will be loaded on a cell-by-cell basis. RAM is also used by the CPU, which again is the brain of the operation, to run the game's logic, load cells, and keep track of what's happening in the world. You want to look into performance mods that mention some sort of distant loading, such as draw distance for items, buildings, and people, and other irrelevant additions to the game. You also want to focus on limiting the amount of detail in the lighting and shadowing of the game, other things like how many textures and cells are loaded up around you, and you would also want to find optimized foliage mods for trees and grass, as well as decreasing their loading distance using any files. Now, aside from downloading optimized textures, you can find mods that tweak the engine's instructions telling it to load or enable certain things. These settings are known as any files. Any files control various game settings, and the settings can be set to improve performance or fidelity. You can change video resolution, level of detail for anti-aliasing, set max frame rate cap, enable or disable VSync, level of detail for shadow resolution, field of view, foliage fading, and even God rays. These are just a few of the things that you can change with any settings. You can find these under Any or Performance Any in the Search tab. Be mindful while downloading these. They will need to be organized the correct way because some of them have multiple changes that can overwrite each other. So make sure you read the descriptions carefully. You also want to use the mod Simple Workaround Framework to have control over some of the ini files. Once you set the ini files with that mod, it'll take over any other ini settings from any other mod. Think about all of what you just learned and search for mods that'll tackle what you're looking for. If you have a list already created, take time to adjust a few things based on your situation. You want to broaden your thoughts and do some research. Think of how many mods you have that affect AI, the environment, the weather, textures, or whatever else might be downloaded. You want to limit how many of each you use until you find the right balance. Remember what I said, broaden your thoughts and do some research. Avoid mods like a quality world map if you're in need of more VRAM. For those who don't know, a quality world map runs in the background, and since you raise the quality of the map, that's even more VRAM you're using on something you can't see. You can also remove useless foliage and find fixes that remove assets that aren't on screen, such as mods that remove grass from city exteriors and underwater grass. Yes, it gets that deep. Speaking of getting deep, the last component to your system is the motherboard. The motherboard plays a critical role in your performance, though it's often underappreciated. It's the foundation that allows all your gaming components to work together efficiently. It connects all your components. It links your CPU, GPU, RAM, storage device, cooling system, and power supply. Without the motherboard, none of your parts can communicate or even get power. I'm not going to get too complicated on this subject, so only the important information will be said. Since the motherboard is the foundation for every component you just learned about, it's important to keep it in the best condition. First, you want to make sure your device is using its full power. Make sure it's not inside any faulty plugs and make sure everything is fully plugged in. Next, it's likely you had your device for quite a while, and so over time it's collected a ton of dust. A dusty device can equal up to 30% less performance. When dust builds, it causes your system to heat up much faster and potentially overheating. Increased temperatures equal lower performance. Dust can clog fans, heat sinks, and air vents, which restrict airflow. This causes your CPU and GPU to run hotter. When they get too hot, they throttle, automatically reducing speed to prevent damage. So in other words, it will slow down its performance to keep it from burning out. And when your components slow down, your performance slows down. So make sure to clean out your system of any dust and keep it in a cool, well-ventilated area. Now let's summarize everything we just learned. Gaming performance relies on a seamless balance. The CPU, aka the brain or power core, handles the logic that makes the game work. The GPU draws out the final image of what should be displayed. The CPU tells the GPU what needs to be drawn. The image that needs to be drawn is then stored into the VRAM. VRAM is its own limited memory storage directly connected to the GPU, to which the GPU uses the stored graphics from the VRAM storage. While your GPU, CPU, and VRAM are all working, RAM, which is basically the same as VRAM, is used to store temporary information around or about the player and the world around them. RAM is controlled by the CPU instead of the GPU, and it's telling the GPU what temporary data it needs to draw frame by frame. The importance of knowing all of this is so that you can practice balancing out your system using mods. This should help you figure out what to limit and what to troubleshoot when you're having a problem with modding. Just remember how this all works, and you're one step closer to having even greater performance. Here's a list of mods that tackle many different aspects of the game. Be careful not to use them all, or you'll end up changing how your game looks and runs for better or worse. You'll even waste slots since some of these override each other. Now you know how your system works and what needs to be done to maintain performance. There are 3 types of mods we download to beef up the graphics that tremendously impact performance, starting with the first one, grass mods. With a very high performance hit, more grass equals more RAM usage. The most affected areas to expect performance drops is in open world areas. You can use mods like the Less Grass Any mods, remove useless plants, and remove rocks to free up some VRAM, which will improve your performance. You can also use Simple Workaround Framework to manually set your grass as any files. The second type of mod is texture pack mods, with a medium to high performance hit depending on quality and the number of visual mods in use. You risk stuttering and crashing if memory is exceeded. Again, the more detail, the more VRAM usage. Choose qualities of 1K or below for performance. You can also download optimized vanilla textures so they will no longer waste VRAM and have your modded textures overwrite them in an optimized state. The last of the three mod types are tree mods, with a moderate performance hit. More trees equals more shadows to render, more geometry to load, and more textures to load. The most affected areas to expect the performance drop is in forested regions. You can also use simple workaround framework to manually set the tree any settings. Using the highest quality of all three of these types is the easiest way to go from 60 frames to 25 frames. So look for mods that are optimized and of lower texture quality. Feel free to mix and match the quality and make sure the smallest items have the lowest quality to your liking. Those are the three hardest hitting categories we tend to gravitate towards. Next, we'll go over some of the other categories that hit our performance as well. These categories are more minor but can still be impactful. First mod type is lighting. Mods like ELFX and Lux make changes to the game's lighting system. Some of these changes can affect performance, such as more lighting modules like braziers and torches being placed all over the world. Lighting mods can create more lights, and more lights equals more shadows. Don't forget that lights and shadows have quality as well. Their performance lies in the resolution of lighting itself. The higher the resolution of the lighting system, the more power your GPU will use or may require. Look for lighting mods that lower the lighting quality down to at least 1024. Next-gen and high-end systems can handle 2048, but even so, you can still squeeze out more performance if you go down to 1024. Next is weather mods. Weather mods have a moderate hit to performance, depending on the type. Clear weathers have the least amount of impact, therefore the most impactful weather types are snow, rain, and foggy weather. Each of these weathers produce extra effects like rain particles, snow particles, and fog sprites. Each of these particles cost more power to be rendered by the GPU, and they also take up RAM space. To increase performance during bad weather, avoid using high-quality retextures, high-density rain, snow, and fog particle mods. Not only do they already eat away at your available RAM, but you've increased the quality and/or quantity, creating more work for the CPU and GPU, and you're also taking up even more available RAM. Other particles like mist, dust, and most fogs can be removed with Claris Duster, since they too eat up your performance, and the mod also doesn't remove the essential fogs. Other similar assets that can take away performance is post-processing assets. Bloom is post-processing that the developers use to improve the visual quality. I do say improve very lightly. Unfortunately, this takes a decent chunk of your performance away from you, and to be honest, the game looks way better without it. So download a Bloom remover mod like Toggled Eye Adaption in Bloom to save up some more performance. That's not all for post-processing, because this game also has another effect called radial blur, which occurs when you're attacked, at low health, etc. It's not a pleasing effect to look at in general, so it's best to remove it. No radial blur is a good mod to look for in order to remove the effect. Screen blood is just like radial blur, and both can be removed since they tend to do harm to the visuals of the game. Removing these will save you more RAM for other things. Remove screen blood is the mod you're looking for. There's another post-processing effect added to this game, and it's called depth of field. In the pause menu under display, there's a depth of field option. For performance, take it down as low as possible. For higher end consoles, take it down 2 ticks to the left from max depth of field. Taking it down by 2 ticks will save you noticeable frames while you keep high quality depth of field. Now, aside from visual aspects causing performance issues for your GPU, you still need to worry about running into problems with your CPU. Mods that change physics like realistic impacts and mods that mess with AI, NPC behavior, and quest should be monitored. Mods that add extra NPCs add extra work for the CPU, and you'll run into bottlenecking more often when you run into cities, towns, and even on the road. Bottlenecking again is just when a lot of processing needs to be done in one area. For the older generation, try to limit these to 1 NPC mod per NPC mod type. For next gen, try to limit 3 NPC mods per NPC mod type. 1 NPC combat mod, 1 NPC AI mod, and 1 NPC increasing mod are examples of NPC mod types. This will have your CPU avoid having to do too many calculations, freeing up the CPU workload as well as save you some RAM when loading NPCs. Quest mods are a bit different, but the larger the mod, the larger the impact, so be mindful to what you add to your world. You want to be careful when downloading too many mods that overhaul the game as well. It may confuse the engine as well as cause them to cause unexpected performance issues. The CPU has a lot to manage as is, and you don't want to just go and download 1,000 different mechanics. You need to sit down with each new added overhaul and see how well they work together. Another thing to keep in mind is certain shaders and textures can affect performance. A lot of mods like Better Blood Texture, Dirt and Blood, Wet and Cold, and other similar mods come with extra scripts. These scripts too have to be calculated by the CPU in real time. The more scripts and objects in one cell, the more work the CPU has to do while working with the RAM. This of course can lower performance. These mods aren't the heaviest hitters, but they can still drop your system's performance. Try to keep this in mind when you're going wild with scripted mods. Now we're going to enter a slightly different realm. If you watch some of my other help videos or have been modding for a while, you probably have heard of save bloating. Save bloating is an inevitable process that slows us all down. To avoid save bloating, all you have to do is delete all your older saves and leaving about 3 of your most recent saves behind, just so that you can go back to anything that needs to go back to. I'm going to lazily explain this since it's a problem mentioned in other videos that either I've made or another YouTuber has made, and this can also be easily researched if you're more curious about it. Over time, the more you hold on to older saves, especially saves with completely different load orders, the longer they'll continue to search for references that aren't there. This process stacks up with every new save, bloating the game with new searches. Each search gets cached and needs to be purged very often, which vanilla Skyrim and console Skyrim does not do. Clearing out your reserved data and all your save game data, then hard resetting the Xbox is the best way to completely clean the game of any changes made by you and your mods. Using patches is another way to give the game a bit of a boost. This can be situational since it depends on the patch type and mods installed. Patches can do a number of things such as fix specific issues, merge mods together, and even make small changes. For performance, you want to focus on patches that fix specific issues and merge mods together. It goes without being said, but if a mod fixes something, the game is likely going to benefit from it. Patches that merge mods together should always be used. Make sure you're downloading the correct patches down to the version, or you'll end up having certain assets clash or even crash you because they were clashing. The reason why this is important is because if you have 2 mods that add new assets in the same vicinity to the game, for example, they end up having more objects load up inside each other, which is never pleasing to look at and will eat away at your VRAM on top of potentially crashing you. Not only that is some of the merged mods could even be hiding inside each other. I practice just about all of these methods, and that's how I can run a load order of over 250 graphical mods or even more without any major performance issues. As soon as you put even just a few of these methods to use, you'll notice tremendous improvements. I hope you all learned something new today, and I hope that this information proves useful to you in the future. Feel free to share this video with a friend, and if you ever need a refresher, feel free to come back to this video. If you want to see more videos like this, leave a like and subscribe for more. And thanks for stopping by.